Today I got the chance to see the John Singer Sargent exhibit at the Musée d'Orsay. I've been really wanting to go since Sargent was an American expat. The exhibition also promised to contain his painting of Madame X, his scandalous portrait of yet another American expat. So basically, right now Paris is flocking to see work by an American expat of an American expat, and I didn't want to be left out. Here is some of his early work that's on display. That said, Sargent was born in Italy to nomadic American parents and never lived in the United States. He traveled to the U.S. for the first time when he was 20 years old and made other trips throughout his lifetime. He spent most of his life in Europe, spoke 4 different languages, and perhaps could be most accurately described as a citizen of the world. The current exposition at the Musée d'Orsay is the first ever exhibition of Sargent's work in France. This is kind of strange, given that he did most of his artistic training in Paris and lived here for many years. He trained with the famous master Carolus Duran, who painted this portrait of his future wife and submitted it to the Paris Salon in 1869, where it was considered scandalous. The lady's dropped glove inspired critics and members of the media to create salacious interpretations of the painting. The curators of the present exhibit made some interesting decisions in how they explained Sargent's story to the Parisian audience. Usually, many art historians say that Sargent was trying to get noticed at the Paris Salon, and that's why he pushed boundaries in his painting of Madame X. But the exposition explains that he was already highly regarded. The first painting that he successfully got accepted into the Paris Salon was this portrait of his friend Fanny Watts, another American expat. This was the painting he got accepted into the Paris Salon the next year. It shows oyster catchers in Bretagne. The panel of judges gave it an honorable mention. In 1881, he painted this portrait of the Chilean consul's wife, and the Paris Salon awarded him a second-class medal for it, which meant that he no longer had to submit his work through the jury process, but rather had gained the right to show whatever he wanted at the Paris Salon in the future. This painting is particularly meaningful for me since it was painted in the woman's home and she lived on the same street as I do. At the time, however, it wasn't called Avenue Foch, it was the Avenue du Bois de Boulogne. Sargent painted this scene in the Jardin de Luxembourg, which was near his apartment. He got so many commissions and was so successful before Madame X that he was able to move into a larger place in the 17th arrondissement. He even made enough money to travel the world, going to Spain, Morocco, and other exotic destinations. Sargent had wanted to paint a portrait of an American socialite who married a wealthy French banker for a long time, but lots of painters asked her to model for them, and she always said no. He got his chance when he painted this portrait of pioneering gynecologist and Casanova, Dr. Pozzi, who was reputed to also be her lover. Dr. Pozzi recommended Sargent to her, and she said yes. Here are some of the studies that he did preparing for the portrait itself. Here's a photograph showing the portrait as it was originally painted, with the left strap falling off of Madame X's shoulder. This caused a huge scandal. As you can see in the painting itself, Sargent ended up repainting that strap. Most art historians talk about how, after the uproar over Madame X, Sargent left Paris, moved to London, and spent the rest of his life painting portraits of the British and American upper crust. The curators of this current exhibit tell a different story, however. They emphasize that the scandal only damaged Sargent's reputation temporarily. They also don't mention that Madame X herself needed to retire from public life for a while. In addition, they say that Sargent continued to split his time between Paris and London. The last sign reads that, quote, he died in 1925, a book by Voltaire in his hand. I think it's safe to say that Paris loves John Singer Sargent, and they want him to be one of their own.